If you're actually new here, I'm Yandtech, and on this channel, we explore the latest tech trends, bring to you educative tech videos to build your career. So today we have an exciting video lined up for you. So if you are ready to learn, to explore, to enjoy, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let's dive in to see what we have for today. So today we are going to be talking about Azure Virtual Desktop. We are going to look at what is Azure Virtual Desktop to start with. So Azure Virtual Desktop is a comprehensive desktop and an app virtualization service running on Microsoft Azure. And Azure Virtual Desktop enables organizations to deliver Windows desktop and application to their employees from virtually anywhere and also on any device. So we are going to look at some of these features of Azure Virtual Desktop. So it delivers a full Windows 10 or Windows 11 experience, including the multi-session Windows 10 experience for scalability and also for cost efficiency. So users can access their desktop, their applications from any device, be it Windows, Mac OS, ISOs, and Android. So AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop, integrates with Microsoft 365 apps to enhance productivity. So since as AVD is built on Azure, AVD inherits that comprehensive security and compliance capabilities. AVD also includes, still on the side of security, AVD also includes features like the identity management with Azure Active Directory, now known as Microsoft Entra ID, conditional access, and also the multi-factor authentication. So AVD quickly scales to meet changing business needs without the need for upfront infrastructure costs. And AVD supports both the personal desktop, which simply means one user per virtual machine, and also the pool desktop, which is actually multiple users per virtual machine in order to optimize resource usage and also the cost. So looking at the future, now let's look at the benefit of Azure Virtual Desktop before doing the lab. So there are different benefits of the Azure Virtual Desktop. The first is it helps to facilitate remote work. So it facilitates a secure and a reliable remote work that helps to enable employees to work from anywhere with a consistent and also with a secure desktop experience. The second is it helps to increase productivity. Looking at productivity simply means it provides a similar and responsive Windows experience that helps to boost user productivity. It also gives access to applications and also desktops is streamlined, which helps to reduce the downtime and also to enhance the workflow. Then we look at security. We look at security built on Azure. It helps to ensure data security. It helps to ensure data security. And the last point is it reduces capital expenditure. So it reduces this capital expenditure by eliminating the need for physical infrastructure. There's no need deploying a physical infrastructure. It also helps to reduce the need for putting in more money or more cash into this infrastructure. And it also helps to optimize the operational costs with flexible scaling and usage usage based on the pricing. So we have the different four main benefits of the Azure Virtual Desktop. Now, before going into the lab, let's look at some of the use cases of the Azure Virtual Desktop. The first is the remote work. It's used for remote work. As by the definition, it can be used from anywhere and on any device. So it enables employees to access their work environment from home or any remote location. You see, many people want to get into IT because of the advantage to work from home. So you see, you have the flexibility to work from home, and then we have the seasonal workforce. We have the business continuity. Then we have bring your own device that you can actually use your own device to access the AVD. Then we have the application compatibility that supports legacy applications that require specific operating system versions or configuration. So we are going to jump into the Azure portal, and in the Azure portal we are going to do the first thing, we are going to create a resource group for this lab. We are going to create a resource group. Then we are going to create a virtual network for our virtual desktop. Then we are going to create groups and add users to those groups and give permission to the groups in order to use them to log into the LVD. Then after doing that, we are going to now create the Azure Virtual Desktop. And in the Azure Virtual Desktop, we are going to do create the host pool. We are going to look at the application groups. Then we are going to create the workspace. Then after doing that, now we are going to download the AVD package. That's the software. Then we are going to subscribe to the AVD with the given credentials coming from the third part, which is was to create a group and add a user to it. So now, coming to the Azure portal, first of all, create a resource group. We create a virtual network. So let's start by creating a resource group first. So I'm going to click on resource group, or you can search for resource group, or you can go to the three horizontal lines and then you go to resource group. So we are going to create a resource group by name AVD-resource group. I'm going to use the region East US. So I'll click on next. That's the tax. We're going to leave it as default. Then I'll click on review plus create. Then I'll click on create. So our resource group has been created. So the next thing we are going to do, we are going to create a virtual network. So we define a network for the virtual machine in the AVD. So I'm going to search for virtual network. I'll click on virtual network. So I'm going to click on create. I have my subscription. That's the resource group, the one I created. Then I'm going to define the name of the the virtual network as AVD VNet, same region as that of the resource group. So I'm going to click on next. Next is the security. So I'm going to leave the security as default. Then I'll click on next. That's the IP address. And you see our address space has been defined as 10.0.0.0/16. And the subnet has been given as 10.0.0.0 up to 10.0.0.255 with a prefix of 24. So I'm going to edit the default and I'm going to give the name as AVD subnet. I'm going to put it as AVD subnet just to have the naming convention. Then I'll click on save. Then I'll click on next is the tax. I'm going to leave it as it is. Then next, review plus create. Then I'm going to click on create. So we have created a resource group. Now we are creating a virtual network. So once deployment is complete, then we are going to move to AVD. So I'm going to click on go to resource. Just for verification, I'll click on address space to verify this is my address space. Then I'll click on subnet. We created a subnet by name AVD subnet. So everything is good with the VNet. So the next thing we are going to do is at the level of the Azure Virtual Desktop. So I'm going to search for Azure. I'm going to search for Azure Virtual Desktop on the search bar. Azure Virtual Desktop. I'll click on it. So on the Azure Virtual Desktop, as been mentioned, we are going to be doing three things. We are going to create the host pools. We are going to
create the application groups. Then at the end, we are going to create the workspace. So let's start with the host pool. So I'm going to click on host pools. Then I'm going to click on create. I'm going to select the resource group. This is my resource group. Then I'm going to define the name for the host pool. I'm going to put it as Yandtech HP as host pool. Then the location is the East US. Then for the validation and environment, I'm going to leave it as no. Then for the preferred app group, we have the desktop. Then we have the remote app. So I'm going to be doing this lab with the desktop. Then under the host pool type, we have two types as well. We have the personal. The personal simply means one user for a virtual machine. Then we have the pool, which is actually multiple users for a virtual machine. So I'm going to select the pool. Then under the pool, we have the load balancing algorithms where we have the breadth first and then we have the depth first. So I'm going to go with the breadth first. I'm going to put the maximum as 2 for this lab. Then I'll click on next, which is the virtual machine. So a host pool is actually a collection of one or more identical virtual machines within an Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So we are going to add a virtual machine to the host pool. So I'm going to click on yes. We have the resource group. Then I'm going to give the name prefix. I'm going to put it as desktop. I'm going to put it as desktop. Then for the virtual machine location, I'm going to give it as the East US. For the availability zone, we have the no infrastructure. We have the availability zones. We have the availability set. To minimize the cost, I'm going to go with no infrastructure. Then we have the security type as trusted. We have this trusted. We have the standard. Then we have the confidential. So I'm going to leave it as this trusted. Then for the image, I'm going to select the Windows 11. We have the different versions. We have the Windows 10 Enterprise, version 21H2, the Gen 2. We have the Windows 11 version 21H2. We have Windows 11 Plus, the Microsoft 365, same as the Windows 10 Plus, the Microsoft 365. You see, we have the different versions. So for this lab, I'm going to select the Windows 11 Enterprise, multi-session version 23H2 plus Microsoft 365. Then for the size, we have the standard D2A SV5. I'm going to change the size, but the size all depends on the cost for the size and the structure of the infrastructure. So I'm going to click on change size. And I'm going to be working with the B2MS. I'm going to be working with the B2MS. Then I'll click on select. Then for the number of virtual machine, I'm going to put it as 1. We just need 1 virtual machine. So as we are creating 1 virtual machine, the name is going to be desktop 0. So if I'm putting in 3 virtual machines, it's going to be desktop 0, desktop 1, desktop 2. So I'm going to leave it as 1. For the OS disk type, we have the standard SSD, we have the standard HDD, we have the premium SSD for performance. So I'm going to select the premium SSD. Then for the size, I'm going to go with the default size, 128 gigabyte. Then we have the network and security. We created a virtual network. So under the virtual network, I'm going to select the virtual network. Then for the subnet, once you select the virtual network, then the subnet is automatically selected. So this is the subnet. Then we have the network security group as basic. The public inbound for security measures, I'm going to leave it as no, not to expose it and leave it at the level of the security. So the next is the domain to join. For this lab, I'm going to be working with Microsoft Entra ID. So I'm going to select the Microsoft Entra ID. For the enroll virtual machine with Intune, I'm going to leave it as no. For the virtual machine administrator account, I'm going to put in my username as Yandtech. I'm going to set the password. I'm going to confirm. There we go. Now for the configuration, custom configuration, I'll leave it as it is. Then I'll click on next. That's the workspace. We'll create the workspace later. So I'm going to leave it as it is. Then I'll click on next, which is advanced. Leave it as default. Click on next, the tags. Then I'll click on review plus create. Still waiting for it to be validated. All right, so we have the validation pass. So I'm going to click on create. All right, deployment is in progress. So most of the times when it comes to AVD, it will take like 10 to 20 minutes for the deployment to complete. So once the deployment is complete, we are going to continue with the next step. So after the deployment, the next sessions for the labs are going to be very straightforward and fast because we're almost there. So let's wait for the deployment to complete. All right, so as you can see, deployment is complete. So click on go to resource. So we have the host pool. So under the host pool, we have the total machines. We have one. We have the connect as one. So under the host pool, what we are going to do is on the left where we have the settings, we have the RDP properties. So I'm going to click on RDP properties. That's the remote desktop protocol. And we are going to set the connection. If you look at the Microsoft Entra single sign-on, you see it's showing not configure. So we are going to configure. So I'm going to click on the drop arrow. Then I'm going to select the second option. I'm going to select the second option that says connection will use Microsoft Entra authentication to provide single sign-on. Then I'm going to click on change. I'm going to click on save to save the changes. So once that has been updated successfully, I'll now search for my Azure Virtual Desktop. So right now we have the host pool. This is our host pool. We have the application group. Application group has been created. So the next thing we are going to do is to create the workspace. So you see, we have no workspace as of now. So for us to create the workspace, you click on create. You select the resource group. So this is our resource group. Then you put the name of the workspace. So I'm going to put it as Yandtech Workspace. Yandtech Workspace. Then the friendly name and the description, I'm going to leave it as it is. Then I'm going to click on next, which is the application groups. So I'm going to register the application group. So I'm going to click on yes. Then I'm going to click on register application groups. This is our application group. So I'm going to click on the plus sign. Then I'll click on select. Then I'll click on next, which is the advanced. Leave it as it is. Then I'll click on next, which is the tax. Then I'll click on review plus create. Then I'll click on create. All right, there we go. So deployment is complete. Once deployment is complete, I'll click on go to resource and we have our workspace. So I will go back to the Azure Virtual Desktop. So right now we have the host pool, we have the application groups, then we have the workspaces. So the next thing we are going to do now, we are going to set the permission. We are at the level of creating a user, the group, and defining the role for the resource group. So we are going to start with the users and the groups first. So I'm going to go to Microsoft Entra ID. I'll go to Microsoft Entra ID. I'll go to users. You see under users, I'm going to create a user by name Yandtech. So I'll click on new user. I'll click on create new user. So I'm going to define the username as Yandtech. The display name, I'm going to put it as Yandtech. Then I'm going to create my password. All right, there we go. Then I'm going to click on next for properties. I'm going to leave the properties as it is. Then I'll click on next for assignment. So under the user for the assignment, I'm going to add the row. So I'm going to click on add row. And for this user, I'm going to define it as the global administrator. So I'm going to search for global administrator. So I'm going to define this guy as the global administrator. Then I'll click on review plus create. I'll click on review plus create. Then I'm going to click on create. So the user has been created. I'm going to refresh. You see the user has been created. Once the user has been created, the next thing we are going to do is at the level of the resource group. So I'm going to search for the resource group. I'll go to resource group. This is our resource group. So I'm going to click on the AVD resource group. Then under the resource group, we have access control. So I'll click on access control. I'm going to define the row. So I'm going to click on add the drop arrow, add row assignment. All right, let me refresh my portal. All right, so I'm going to search for virtual machine. So I'm going to search for virtual machine, user login. We'll search for virtual machine user login. That's the first row we are going to define. My system is taking a little time to load. So we have the user login. So I'm going to select the user login. I'm going to click on next. So the next thing is for us to select the members. So I'm going to search for Yandtech. All right, so this is Yandtech. I'm going to select Yandtech. Click on add Yandtech, then I click on select. Then I'll click on next and review plus assign. So that has been defined. So if I go to Microsoft Entra ID again, oh, sorry, if I go to resource group, if I go to resource group, it has been defined. So I'm going to define one more row. That is administrator row. So I'm going to go again to access control. I'll go to add row assignment, add the row assignment. I'll go to rows and I'll search for virtual machine administrator login. You see virtual machine administrator login. So I'm going to click on next. I'll select the members and I'll select Yandtech. I'm going to click on the plus sign and I'll click on select. I'll click on next. Then I'll click on review plus create. So once that has been added, we are good. So the next thing we are going to do is now to connect to AVD. We are going to connect to AVD using the app. You can actually download the app. So let me just quickly show you guys on how to download the app or the software. So I'm going to search for Azure Virtual Desktop, the client. Azure Virtual Desktop for the client. Then I'm going to click on the remote desktop. I'm going to click on the remote desktop. So I'm going to where we have the remote desktop client. I'm going to click for Windows. You see, I'm going to click for Windows. Then I'm going to scroll down where we have the download. You see Windows 64-bit. Once you click on this, it will take you to the download, but I already have it installed on my system. So it's very straight to the point. Once you download, then you install. Once you install, it's going to look like this. Once you install, it's going to look like this, where we are going to subscribe to our remote desktop. So before doing that, I'll come back to my portal and I'll go to Microsoft Entra ID. I'll go to Microsoft Entra ID. Then I'll go to users. I'll go to users. Now we have created our user just to verify if our user has been added to the application group. I'll go to Azure Virtual Desktop. This is our application group. So I'm going to click on the application group. Where we have the application group on the left, we have assignments. So you click on assignments, you see there are no users or user groups. So I'm going to click on the add. Then I'm going to select Yandtech. Then I'll click on select. There we go. You see it has been added. So right now we are good to go. So back to Azure Virtual Desktop, I'll click on Workspaces. This is our Workspaces. So right now we are good now to connect to the Azure Virtual Desktop. So I'm going to just copy the principal name for my user by going to Microsoft Extra ID. Then I go to the user. This is the user I'm going to use to connect. So I'm going to click on Yandtech. So you see, this is the principal name, my user principal name. This is what I'm going to use to connect to AVD. So I'm going to copy. So once you install AVD, it's going to look like this. This is how it's going to look like. So once you have this screen, you go ahead and you click on subscribe. Then it's asking for the sign in. So I'm going to paste my user principal name. Then I'm going to click on next. It's going to ask for the password. So I'm going to define the password. And I'm going to click sign in. It's asking me to update the password. So I'm going to put the current password. Then I'm going to set a new one. There we go. So I'm going to click on sign in. So I'm going to click on apps letter. All right, there we go. So you see now we have the workspace. Remember, we created a workspace by name Yandtech Workspace. So this is the session desktop. So once we have this, you just need to double click on the session desktop. So I'm going to double click on this guy, and then you'll see it's going to connecting to the session desktop. And there we go. It's going to ask for login again. So I'm going to put in the password. And I'm going to click on sign in. I'm going to click on yes. So you see, you are attempting to connect to a remote device with the following details. You see desktop 0. So this is the virtual machine. Remember, we created one virtual machine. So we have desktop 0. So I'm going to click on yes. And it's connecting. And there we go. It's actually preparing the windows. All right, there we go. So you see we have the Windows 11 plus Microsoft 365 application that is also installed on our Azure Virtual Desktop. So this is Azure Virtual Desktop. So far, just a recap, we created a resource group, we created a virtual network, then we created the AVD, and in the course of creating the AVD, we create the host pool. Also with the application group, then we created a workspace. Then we created a user where we define a global administrator to the user. Then we went to the resource group, and then we defined the role-based access control where we gave virtual machine user login and also the virtual machine administrator login. So this is it about Azure Virtual